Grandpa Stand is a well-known and respected figure in the village, and no wonder. He went through the Afghan war a true hero, but despite experiencing the horrors of war, his heart did not grow cold. He loves his homeland and fellow villagers, treating them with kindness and paternal care. He's always ready to lend a helping hand to those in need. It's unfortunate, but fate dealt him a lonely hand. He once had a girlfriend named Mia, but sadly she didn't wait for his return from Afghanistan. Stan mourned her loss for a long time. The wound in his heart slowly healed over the years, but he closed the door to his heart and let no one else in. Can you imagine how much untapped love he has accumulated? He shared it with everyone around him, and they reciprocated with the same kindness. Living alone became a habit over the years. The familiar walls of his childhood home still held the memories of his mother's caring hands and heart-to-heart talks with his father who had raised him. Stan did have his own one-bedroom apartment, a reward for his service in Afghanistan. But he preferred his old, cozy, and infinitely beloved home. That's how his life passed peacefully and uneventfully. He didn't even notice how the calm and kind young Stan had transformed into Grandpa Stan over the years, and he would have continued this way until the end of his days if it weren't for one incident that changed the course of his life. It happened like this. One evening, Grandpa Stan decided to make some potatoes with onions and carrots and good old butter. He really loved bread, and he realized he was out of it. There was no choice but to go to the store, which was just a 10-minute walk away. It was already dark as he walked down the road. Suddenly, he heard strange noises and a girl sobbing behind him. He turned around and saw two guys dragging a girl around 18 who was resisting with all her might. Grandpa knew everyone in the village, but these two were strangers. "Grandpa, get off the road," one of the guys shouted at him, but Grandpa Stan felt such deep pity for this frail, crying, frightened girl that he found an immense surge of courage within himself. It was as if he weren't 75, but 35 years old. "Let the girl go," he replied. "Grandpa, leave quietly, or I'll knock you down without hesitation, old man," one of the thugs threatened. Grandpa Stan realized that words wouldn't help here. He needed to take action. Yes, his health wasn't what it used to be, but his hands and feet still remembered the combat techniques he had used against the enemy. He took a defensive stance, and in one swift motion, put one of the attackers on his back. "Have you completely lost your mind, old man?" the offended guy croaked. The other thugs smirked and yanked the girl's hair so hard that she screamed in pain. "But don't worry, now it's your turn," Grandpa shouted with determination. A few seconds later, one of the guys was on his knees with his hands twisted behind his back. "Grandpa, are you some kind of martial artist? Let me go," he pleaded. "Ah, you cowards, you're only brave when you pick on the weak and defenseless. How much must you hate people to torment them like this? I won't allow it. Get out of this village," Grandpa yelled. Both attackers struggled to their feet and obediently retreated. Grandpa Stan didn't expect to find such agility within himself. He was always calm and quiet, and suddenly he was filled with rage. His soul couldn't bear such monstrous injustice. Fortunately, it all ended well. The girl leaned against the wall of a house, continuing to sob. Grandpa approached her, embraced her, looked into her large, frightened eyes, and wiped the tears from her dirt-streaked face. "Sweetheart, it's all right. Calm down. No one will harm you anymore. Let's introduce ourselves. I'm Grandpa Stan." "What's your name?" Grandpa asked. "Cindy," she whispered almost inaudibly. "Where do you live?" "Let me help you get home," Grandpa offered. "I don't have a home. I'm an orphan. My parents had an accident when I was 6. I lived in an orphanage, and this year I turned 18, which means I have to start my adult life." "But how?" "They were supposed to give me a room, but some paperwork wasn't in order, so I ended up without a place to stay. I temporarily lived with friends in the city and earned some money here and there. I met a guy, we started dating. He said he liked me and promised to help with housing and work. Today I came for another meeting, but he was with some other guy, introduced him as a friend. Then they grabbed me and forcibly brought me here. I don't know anything else. Grandpa, thank you. If it weren't for you, I would have been lost. I don't know how to go on. When I was in the orphanage, everything was clear. They took care of everything for me. But now I have to do everything on my own, and I'm not ready for it. I'm so scared, the girl cried. Don't worry, dear. There's nothing to be afraid of. Everything will work out for you. You know what? Let's live together. I'm alone, and I have a spacious house with plenty of room, and there's work for you in our village. You'll be like a daughter to me. Agree, my dear, Grandpa suggested. I agree, Grandpa. Meeting you is a blessing. I'll be grateful for the rest of my life. The girl's face lit up with a smile. Grandpa Stan was delighted. Even in his old age, he would have his daughter Cindy. They would have their own little family nest, someone to love and care for. Cindy shivered, pulling her shoulders up. She was cold. It was autumn outside, and she was still wearing a lightweight jacket and worn-out sneakers. You could tell she came from an orphanage. Why are we just standing here? Let's go home. I've cooked some delicious potatoes with onions and carrots. Hungry, aren't you? You'll warm up, Grandpa said, caring, and they walked embracing each other. What a warm and pleasant word, home, Cindy thought. Could she also find happiness? A home, a family, something she could call her own. Here was the house. It was old but not dilapidated. You could tell the owner took care of it. There was a small garden, all neat and tidy. Well done, Grandpa. The keys jingled, the floorboards creaked, and Cindy found herself inside. How cozy it was compared to the grim walls of the orphanage. Oh my, a stove. She had only read about it in fairy tales. She touched it. It was still warm, and the potatoes probably from there. It must be delicious. Saints' icons in the corner, old family photos on the walls. A neatly made bed, a worn-out sofa, a wardrobe, stools. It seemed like an ordinary time-worn country house, but no, each item, even the walls, exuded history, grace, and kindness. It felt like generations had happily lived their lives here. Come on, sweetheart, make yourself at home, use everything as if it were your own. We'll have dinner soon, Grandpa joyfully offered. He immediately called Cindy. Daughter couldn't bring himself to call her anything else. Maybe it was because he didn't have children of his own. And here was this gentle, modest girl, deprived of parental love and care. Fate had brought them together, and Grandpa Stan was incredibly happy about it. Cindy devoured the potatoes as if she hadn't eaten in a month, and they were fantastically delicious, fresh from the stove. Grandpa Stan watched her delighted and thought about how lucky he was. He would have a helper and a source of joy for the rest of his life. The evening flew by unnoticed. They sat and talked about everything under the sun, until Grandpa noticed that Cindy was starting to nod off. It's time to sleep, my dear. The morning is wiser than the evening. Tomorrow we'll start getting things in order, Grandpa concluded. By morning, the whole village knew that Grandpa Stan had taken in the orphan girl, and he had done it with flair. He had defended her from hooligans, fought for her like a true man. Every villager without exception admired his actions. The women whispered to each other, wondering how Grandpa and the girl would manage. Where would she find work? After all, it wasn't like adopting a pet. Grandpa Stan had thought about this too. Cindy had finished school, but there were no universities in the village. However, if she decided she could go to a city university in a year or two, for now, she needed to find a job in the village. He didn't want to postpone this for too long and remembered their neighbor Kelly, the head of the local post office. He paid her a visit during the day. Kelly, I have a question for you. Well, in general, Grandpa hesitated. Stan, I already know everything. You are a hero. You saved that girl and you've taken her in. Hats off to you. I even guess why you came. You want to find a job for your ward, right? Kelly asked. Yes, you're right. Can you help? Grandpa replied with hope. I have one vacant spot. Can she handle delivering packages and registered mail? The salary isn't much, at least for now. Is that acceptable? Kelly inquired. Of course. Thank you, Kelly, for your help. You didn't let the old man down. I'll go and tell my daughter the good news, a satisfied Grandpa said and hurried back home. Cindy received the news with less enthusiasm than Grandpa. Perhaps it was because of the low income. Don't worry, Cindy. This is just the beginning. You won't be working as a mail carrier forever. Tomorrow we'll go and get you registered. Grandpa reassured her. What do we have for lunch? He asked Cindy. She looked at him in surprise and replied, I haven't prepared anything. I was waiting for you. Don't worry, we'll figure something out. Grandpa wasn't disappointed, though. He was a bit puzzled. He had started to notice that Cindy didn't seem too keen on domestic chores, but he understood her circumstances. She had spent her entire conscious life in a state-run institution where they didn't make her cook or clean. It wasn't difficult for him to handle household tasks. He had earned plenty for himself over the years, and now it was time to take care of someone else who would be like family to him. The next day was significant for Cindy. It marked her first job in her life. Stepping into the post office, Cindy realized it wouldn't be boring here. People came in all day. That meant constant activity and interaction. She was guaranteed to have friends here and maybe even find a young man. Like all 18-year-old girls, she dreamed of a great love and searched for it everywhere she went. Her only concern was her salary, which wasn't enough for makeup, new dresses, and shoes. But then she remembered that she had Grandpa now and he would help her. He had saved her once, he would save her again. She knew without a doubt that Grandpa had nothing but love for her. She was introduced to the team. 2 more people worked at the post office, a middle-aged woman named Gwendolyn and a young girl named Kimmy. It was with Kimmy that Cindy instantly connected. "Why did you stay here in the village instead of going to the city?" Cindy asked. "It just worked out that way. I finished school, but I failed my entrance exams to the technical college. So I had to come back here. I couldn't just starve in the city. My mom, well, she got me a job at the post office. I've been here ever since, but I want to leave. What's there for me in this place? No well-off husband, no decent job. There are so many opportunities out there. I'll leave in the spring, I swear. And you're living with Grandpa Stan, right? I heard he saved you from those thugs. He's a good grandpa, he loves you. Live and be happy." Kimmy replied. "I thought the same at first, but then I realized it's not for me. It's boring and without prospects here. Just the thought of spending my whole life here makes me want to cry. Like you, I want money, a husband, and a great life. None of that will ever happen here. Will you take me with you to the city?" Cindy asked her friend. "I will, but not before spring, or else my mother will kill me." I promised her we'll achieve our dreams faster together. Kimmy promised. So the days passed one after the other. Cindy spent most of her time at work while Grandpa Stan managed the house and the garden, taking care of the household. In the evenings, Cindy always had a delicious dinner waiting for her, and then she would run out to chat with her friend Kimmy. "Sweetie, don't run off tonight. I've missed you. I only see you at dinner and breakfast, and even on weekends you run off," Grandpa pleaded. "But Grandpa, I'm so tired from work. I'll just go to Kimmy's for a little while to relax. I'll be back soon. Don't wait up for me," Cindy insisted. But Grandpa Stan couldn't sleep a wink until Cindy returned home. A month flew by unnoticed since the day Cindy entered Grandpa Stan's life. One evening she didn't sit down at the dinner table, but lay down on the couch. "Sweetie, what's wrong with you?" Grandpa asked, concerned. "Something doesn't feel right today. I'll just lie down for a bit," Cindy replied. "Maybe you need to see a doctor, Cindy," Grandpa suggested, but Cindy only shook her head and buried her face in the pillow. A few minutes later she jumped up and ran to the sink. She started vomiting. "Oh dear, what's wrong, my child?" Grandpa asked anxiously. "No, Grandpa, it seems I'm pregnant," she said in a low voice. "Is this from the city? Who's the father of the child?" Grandpa was surprised. "I had a boyfriend in the city. It wasn't serious, we met a few times. Turns out I wasn't important to him. I was just a temporary distraction," Cindy explained, nearly in tears. "Poor you, my dear. How much you've had to go through at just 18 years old. But don't worry, everything will be okay. I'm happy right now and I'll be even happier. We'll have a daughter and now a grandchild too." Grandpa Stan comforted her, his face beaming with joy. Diapers and sleepless nights didn't frighten him. He was thrilled that he was finally going to have a real family, something he didn't have in his youth. Cindy, on the other hand, was feeling the complete opposite. It seemed like her world had come crashing down. Her life had ended before it even began. She'd have to say goodbye to dreams of the city, a wealthy husband, and financial stability. Ahead of her lay oblique existence, day after day, month after month, year after year. She felt like she was losing her mind with these thoughts, but Grandpa Stan just thought it was the stress of pregnancy. The next morning, Cindy visited the doctor, and her suspicion was confirmed. She was almost 1.5 months pregnant. For her, this news felt like a death sentence. Maybe she should get rid of the baby. No, she couldn't. Grandpa wouldn't survive it. She returned home feeling disheartened. "Cindy, what's wrong? Don't worry, we'll get through this together. We'll raise a beautiful child, and everyone will envy us. I even made your favorite mashed potatoes. Will you have some?" "Come sit at the table," Grandpa suggested. For some reason, he immediately assumed it would be a grandson. He had even chosen a name, Marcus. After lunch, Cindy got ready for work. "Yes, of course, go to work. Just take care of yourself, my dear," Grandpa said. As always, the post office was bustling with activity, even though the town was small. People came in to collect packages from loved ones, and for the elderly, it was also a social gathering place. "Hey friend, I've been looking for you everywhere. I was starting to worry if you were sick," Kimmy said when she spotted Cindy. "Worse than that, let's wait until everyone clears out and I'll tell you everything," Cindy replied, piquing Kimmy's curiosity. Half an hour later, Cindy gathered her courage and shared her problems with Kimmy. Unlike Cindy, Kimmy reacted positively to the news of the pregnancy. "Good for you. Why are you so worried? You'll have the baby, and then, as they say, you'll have a clean slate. There's your grandpa willing to do anything for you. Let him take care of the little one. You can always go to the city later," Kimmy consoled her. "What city?" "My fate is to live in this backwater, work like crazy at the post office and change diapers, and in the evenings cry into my pillow about my miserable life," Cindy replied sadly. "Well, you've painted quite a grim picture there, my friend. Things can turn out differently. The baby will come, and you can wait a while until the newborn stage passes. Then you can go to the city, for instance, to earn a living. Grandpa can take care of the baby in the meantime. Afterward, you can come back for the baby. It's just one option," Kimmy advised. Kimmy's convincing words boosted Cindy's spirits, and she started believing that not all was lost and her life could change dramatically. She just needed to wait a little while. Cindy's pregnancy went smoothly, thanks to her young age and Grandpa Stan's care. He was like a guardian angel, making sure everything was perfect for Cindy. To him, having a daughter and a grandson was an unimaginable treasure. Cindy, much to Grandpa's surprise, became calm and gentle. Perhaps motherhood had already started leaving its mark. Grandpa naively thought she would make a wonderful mother to Marcus. As the months went by, there were only a couple of weeks left until the expected due date. Cindy became noticeably more nervous and capricious. She often snapped at Grandpa, who attributed it to the stress of pregnancy. One morning, Cindy moaned, "Grandpa, it feels like it's starting," and then screamed in pain. Stan didn't panic. He quickly called for an ambulance. Soon, Cindy was on her way to the hospital. She gave birth quickly, a healthy, robust baby boy, almost a little giant. 3 days later, the new mother was back home with her son. They named the baby Marcus, just as Grandpa Stan had wished. He was overjoyed. To him, this was a priceless gift at the age of 80. He had no doubt that they would raise Marcus together, and he would even live to see his wedding. But Cindy's mood sank. She had got pregnant easily, but now she had to deal with the consequences. She couldn't resist the allure of city life and what seemed like endless opportunities. One day, Cindy suddenly became disheartened. She asked Grandpa, "Do you think I could go back to the city to work? Leave Marcus with you for a while?" Stan didn't lose his cool. He considered her request seriously. Then he replied, "Cindy, you need to take care of yourself and Marcus right now. But when you feel ready, we can discuss your plans. Your happiness is important to me." In her naivety, Cindy thought she could just leave Marcus with Grandpa Stan and return to the city for a better life. She hadn't yet realized that her true happiness was already in her hands. Over time, she became more and more engrossed in her city dreams. 6 months into raising the baby, Cindy seriously contemplated leaving for the city. Her soul yearned for a better life. She was young and naive. She didn't understand that her happiness was already right in front of her. She spent a long time pondering how to break the news of her departure to Grandpa Stan. Finally, she decided to bring it up over breakfast. "Grandpa, I read an advertisement. In the city there are job openings for secretaries and clerks in 2 large commercial firms. They promised career advancement too. I want to apply for the job. The salary is good." There are no opportunities here in the village and they pay peanuts at the post office. Please let me go to work and earn some money. I promise I'll send money back every month and visit. Cindy tried to persuade Grandpa Stan. Stan couldn't help but feel sad. Cindy, why is it so bad here? Your income and my pension are enough for us. What would you even spend money on in this village? There's not much to do or buy. That's the point, Grandpa. There's nothing to do here and I want more for myself and for Marcus. I promise I'll send money every month, call and visit. Cindy insisted, looking hopefully at her grandpa. Despite being crushed by this request, Stan couldn't bear to deny Cindy her dreams. He thought about it and finally said, Cindy, right now you need to take care of yourself and Marcus, but when you feel ready, we can discuss your plans. Your happiness is important to me. Cindy thought she could leave Marcus with Grandpa Stan and go back to the city for a better life. She hadn't realized that her true happiness was already in her hands. Over time, she became more and more absorbed in her city dreams. 6 months into raising the baby, Cindy seriously contemplated leaving for the city. Her soul yearned for a better life. She was young and naive, not understanding that her happiness was already in front of her. She spent a long time pondering how to break the news of her departure to Grandpa Stan. Finally, she decided to bring it up over breakfast. Grandpa, I've read an ad. There are job openings in the city in 2 big commercial firms for secretaries and clerks. They even promise career advancement. I want to apply for the job. The salary is great. There are no opportunities here in the village and they paid peanuts at the post office. Please let me go work and earn money. I promise I'll send money every month, call and visit, Cindy said, trying to convince her grandpa. Stan felt as though a piece of his heart had been torn out. How could he, and especially Marcus, live without Cindy? But at the same time, her dream was calling. He couldn't deny her that. Reluctantly, he agreed and even gave her some money to start with using his meager pension savings. Over the next 2 days, Cindy packed her bags, kissed her grandpa and her little son, and left. Take care of yourself, my dear, Stan shouted after the departing bus. He couldn't have imagined that this would be their last meeting for the next 15 years. The company Cindy started working for turned out to be involved in fraudulent real estate practices. They posed as employees of a property management company, deceiving unsuspecting pensioners into signing agreements to give up their apartments. In the best-case scenario, people ended up in less desirable housing, while in the worst case, they were left homeless. At first, Cindy, being naive, didn't realize what the company was really doing. When she finally understood, it was already too late to escape. She was trapped under the threat of death. Frightened and horrified, she, due to her gentle and unassuming appearance, pushed fake contracts onto elderly people. Her partner in crime from the same company, Matt, wasn't the prince on a white horse she had dreamt of, but a rude and unbearable man. To make matters worse, he had become addicted to alcohol. When Cindy accidentally got pregnant, he shouted in anger, "She's gone mad? Get an abortion immediately." Those were Matt's words when Cindy accidentally got pregnant. She had money, but what kind of money? Money earned through deceit and the tears of innocent people. Cindy didn't call or visit Grandpa's stand. Why? She was ashamed. Her dream of a beautiful life had crumbled in an instant. What would she tell him? That she was deceiving and robbing people and her common-law husband was a tyrant and an alcoholic? I'll find a way out of this mess, and then I'll come back, Cindy thought. But she couldn't find a way out, not in a year, not in 2, not in 5. Then they were caught by the police while attempting to scam another elderly lady. The young man who posed as the pensioner's grandson turned out to be an undercover police officer, and a team of officers waited outside the door. "Hands behind your back and don't resist," one of the policemen roughly pushed Cindy. The rest was a blur. 6 months of grueling investigation followed, then a trial, and finally a verdict: 6 years in a settlement colony. It was only now that Cindy realized how cruelly she had erred. When she abandoned her closest family members, Grandpa Stan and her son Marcus, all for the senseless and lofty idea of a glamorous life. Instead, she got a harsh prison bed and a prison cell. How she wished she could turn back time. She would never have made such a decision. Marcus was now 6 years old. What had become of him? How was he coping with Grandpa? Was he healthy? What had she done with her life? She needed someone to tell about her miserable fate so she wouldn't go crazy. Her cellmate Vanda agreed to be her shoulder to cry on, and Cindy poured out her heart, crying incessantly. "Oh, you've been through a lot, dear, so why aren't you doing anything about it? Write to them, tell them you're alive, thinking about them, dreaming of returning," Vanda advised. "But how? I'm so ashamed, more ashamed than I've ever been. I left them, and now suddenly I'd be writing to them from prison." Cindy continued to sob. Oh, if only she knew how wrong she was when she spoke like that. Not a day went by without Grandpa Stan thinking of her. He loved her as if she were his own, and then she vanished. It was as if she had disappeared. He searched for her, searched for a long time, suffered and grieved. But how could he find her when Cindy lived in rented apartments? Only his grandson Marcus saved him from utter despair, providing comfort, joy, and hope. Time marches on relentlessly. Even 6 years in prison seemed to fly by. The gates closed behind Cindy with a creak, and she was free once more. Her cellmate Vanda had been released 6 months earlier, jotting down her address and inviting Cindy to stay with her. Where should she go? To Grandpa Stan or to Vanda? Once again, Cindy made an irreversible mistake, of which there had been many in her life. She chose Vanda. Vanda's aunt worked at the local railway station and arranged jobs for them. Cindy became a cleaner, and Vanda was entrusted with ticket sales. The station was only a 2-hour journey from the small settlement where Grandpa Stan and little Marcus lived. How many times she had yearned to board a train and go to them, but something always held her back. And so day by day, month by month, 3 years passed. One day, while cleaning near the ticket counters, Cindy noticed that someone had left a local newspaper on a chair. She absent-mindedly picked it up, glanced at the front page, and was stunned. She leaned against the wall to keep from collapsing. There was a photograph and a brief article stating that a local schoolboy named Marcus had earned 2nd place in a nationwide history Olympiad, with a wrinkled old man standing beside him. Yes, it was Grandpa Stan, and next to him was her son. How handsome and intelligent he had become. Vanda, come here quickly," Cindy shouted. "What happened?" panted her friend as she rushed over. "Vanda, I can't go on without them. I can't. Look at what's in the newspaper. I'm leaving today." Cindy spoke through tears. "Of course, go." Vanda supported her. During the entire journey, Cindy tried to think of what to say to explain herself. Nervousness made her mind go blank. She needed to fall to her knees and beg for forgiveness as if before God. How guilty she was. Here was the road, the very road they had walked for the first time 15 years ago, arm in arm with Grandpa. Oh Lord, and there's the house, old but so familiar. She knocked on the door once, twice. Was nobody home? Then the door swung open, revealing a tall, handsome young man standing on the threshold. Cindy's legs weakened and a lump formed in her throat. She looked at her son but couldn't utter a word. "Are you looking for someone? Grandpa Stan? He'll be back soon," the young man said. "Are you Marcus?" Cindy asked. "Yes, and who are you?" He looked at the strange woman in surprise. I'm your mother," Cindy said softly. "Silly lady, are you joking or something? Not funny. Grandpa Stan will be here soon." "You can wait in the yard," the teenager replied, then closed the door. Tears welled up in Cindy's eyes, and she slumped to the ground, continuing to sob. She couldn't remember how long she sat there until she heard a familiar voice. "Cindy, my daughter, you've returned? I hoped and believed every day that you were alive. You've come back while I'm still in this world." The old man hugged her with his wrinkled hands. "Forgive me, Grandpa, forgive me. Forgive me." Cindy couldn't say anything more. Tears choked her. "My dear, let's go inside. Everything will be fine now. You have such an amazing son. Thank you for him." Grandpa Stan reassured her. "He didn't accept me," Cindy said sadly. "Well, of course, he doesn't know you. Everything will change. Just give it time," Grandpa promised. That evening she told them everything, and Grandpa Stan kept repeating, "My girl, my poor girl. You've been through so much." Marcus listened to her without displaying much emotion. Apparently, he hadn't forgiven her for leaving and not showing up for 15 years. "Everything will work out, my daughter," Grandpa Stan reassured her. "You know, Marcus finally convinced me to move to a new apartment. Remember what I got after Afghanistan? He says there are all the comforts of civilization there, so I should take a break. I'm thinking maybe it's a good idea to live there for a while and you can stay here, take care of the house. We'll visit each other. You come to us and we'll come to you. If you want, I can even get you a job. I heard there's an opening for a janitor." "Thank you, Grandpa," Cindy replied. "How could I have lived all these years without you?" Cindy gave her grandpa a tight hug and a kiss. Marcus, on the other hand, simply extended his hand, but he looked at her kindly. This gave her hope that they would at least communicate from time to time. The future of their relationship depended on them. The most important thing was that life continued and she had her family, her loved ones, close by. She was now certain of that.